yes, I'll make that announcement. Good afternoon, committee. We're going to wait about 1 more minute. There is a sign-up sheet in the back. So if anybody has anybody that they know of who have come down to speak on the bill, we definitely want to hear from everyone. There's a sign-up in the back of the room. So we'll wait about 1 minute, see if there's anybody outside that is listening, would like to sign up. All right, committee, we will go ahead and start. As our normal, I would ask that Chairman Dickey, would you mind opening us in a prayer for wisdom here? What number are you, sir? There you go.
I got it. Thank you, Chairman. Let us pray. Father, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for your presence here. Just be with us in this meeting. Give us discernment and give us a direction and your guidance in the decisions we may make. Just lead and guide us in all that we may do. Thank you for the many blessings that you've given us each and every day. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. All right, committee, we have a substitute to House Bill 647. And to the author, we have LC 44-1700S. Perfect. Well, it is an honor to chair the subcommittee, and the commitment that this committee has to our natural resources has been an honor to be a part of for all these years. And I appreciate Chairman Smith bringing such good folks to this committee, and it's an honor to serve under you. But more importantly, to our environment, right? I have 4 children, and I'm lucky to be able to spend most of our time outside. And I think this bill continues to protect their future. And so I'm excited to hear about this bill. And Representative Smith, at this time, you can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. As stated, I'm bringing to you a substitute to House Bill 647. If you think back with me, I know a lot's gone on since last year, but we passed a bill out of committee last year, 929, and went to the rules and passed and went to the floor of the House, and we actually passed that bill on the floor of the House and sent it over to the Senate. The Senate, for some reason, did not take that bill up. And so we're back, since this is the start of another 2-year term. So we're back, and I introduced this substitute, and somebody's going to say, well, why didn't you just use the same bill? I did use the same bill, but there's one difference, and I'm going to get to that in just a minute, but I'm going to be brief. I just want to bring you kind of up to date on some of the issues in the bill that were in the bill last year, and it's the exact same bill this year. On page 2, item 4 and 5, it talks about CCR. That's your coal combustion residuals, and that's the fly ash that comes off of the generation of electricity. And then it talks about CCR surface impoundments, and that talks about a natural impoundment due to topography, or whether it's a man-made or diked up area that will hold these materials that come when you generate electricity. So that's the two definitions on page 2. Then you can thumb through the bill. Most of those definitions, all of them are still the same, renumbered. But the main portion I want to get to is on page 10. Let's see, go to page 11. If you look at page 11, which is line 264, in last year's bill, the number of years that the ponds would be monitored was 30, and I have raised that to 50 years. And so they'll conduct, they will monitor these ash ponds for 50 years after the completion of the closure. If you look down on line 274, it talks about an executive summary that will be given. And that summary includes a description of the facility you see and the impoundment area. It talks about the groundwater monitoring. It shows a map where the impoundment is located. It talks about the most recent samplings in this summary. It talks about any corrective action that had to be taken or will be taken. It also, and I think at the top of page 12, lines 282 and 283 is very, very important, because it says this summary will have to be written in a manner that can be reasonably understood by individuals without an environmental or technical background, background or expertise. I think that's very important. We get a lot of reports sometimes, and I think they mean well and the numbers are good, but we can't understand what they're saying, and that's the way this has to be written so that we as lay people can understand what's going on. It says that these inspections on these impoundments, once they're closed, they will be tested annually while they're being closed, at least annually. That leaves it up to EPD that can even do more tests. And then it says at least after the closure, at least once every 5 years. So there again, there's some flexibility in that language also. Summarized, identical bill to the previous one, except moving the number from 30 years to 50 years. And if there are any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to try to answer those.
Very good. Thank you so much for bringing this. There are a few questions, and I'll just give the committee a heads up on kind of how we're going to proceed. We're going to take a few questions of the author. Then we're going to hear some testimony, both from the public, from committee members who are from House members who are not on this committee, as well as to let everyone know, EPD is standing by for questions if we get into some technical questions. But as we move forward, we're going to after questions to the presenter, we're gonna have a hard limit of 3 minutes per person that is called in. So here we go. I believe I saw 33 first. I apologize. It's kind of a little bit different up here. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this bill again. I just have a quick question, and that refers to the 50 years. First of all, why did you change it from 30 and 50, and what happens when the 50 years are over?
Well, I probably won't be here when that 50 years is over, but I have 7 grandsons that I hope will be here when it's at that time comes. And I drew, Ledge Council drew the bill up just as it was last year. And as I sat there on the floor looking at that, I said, I think I'll just stretch that time out because I have a 7-month-old grandson. And I said, I'll stretch that time out to 50 years. I feel like there's going to be monitoring from now to eternity. I can't see why EPD would not monitor forever, but I can't say what'll happen tomorrow. So I just thought it was a better rule of thumb to let's go 50 years.
Going to go to 16. Is that Ms. Buckner?
Thank you. And if EPD is on the line, this might be more appropriate for them, but the bill's not clear to me. What happens if we're monitoring those 50 years and something is detected? What is that process of what will happen? We find a problem in whatever we're monitoring for, what happens?
I think that's where EPD, you're correct. That's where EPD steps in and they have their guidelines of what they do if there is an infraction. So I'd certainly refer that to the EPD.
Sure. Would you like for them to answer that one? Okay, great. We're going to get that on. Okay, whenever y'all are ready, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Chuck Mueller. I'm the chief of the Land Protection Branch. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we detect constituents in our groundwater monitoring program that are above the limits that are established, the permittee is to conduct an assessment of corrective measures, which they will then take through a public process and select a remedy. We will oversee the implementation of that remedy until such time as the levels in the groundwater are back within compliance of the standards.
Thank you, sir. 34, is that Chairman Dickey? I believe so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a question, Representative, on line 287. It says at least such and section shall be conducted annually during the and then once every 5 years following the completion of closure. So this 5 years, every 5 years indefinitely is that the way I read it? I mean, it might be 500 years.
And there again, I'm not an attorney, but we have the 50-year period that we know we're asking them to do it. But if it says every 5 years with no timeline or no deadline, I would assume it would continue on monitoring. And that those two words in front of that at least. So that to me, that gives them a lot of flexibility to go out if they think there's an issue to test even more.
And I'd like to bring in Attorney Higbee and see if he could clarify that for us. That's important.
Chairman, that wouldn't be my interpretation of that paragraph of the code section, that responsibility continues.
Very good. Thank you. And Representative Mcdonough, I believe you're 40.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My question is kind of like Chairman Dickey's. I wanted some clarification on the word closure, and I know he kind of answered a little bit of it, but I know capping is one thing, and then I don't think closure. I still wanted a little more clarification on that word is closure. I don't think. I know we got the 50-year mark, but I still want some clarification on the word closure. And my second question is, what is the cost of a test? I know you're doing it once every 5 years after it is closed or during the closure or the capping of the coal ash pond. But what is the cost of a test?
Thank you, Representative McDonald. I think these two also are EPD questions because closure in my mind is you perform an act until it gets to a certain point and EPD declares this impoundment is closed. And at that point it goes forward and they do their monitoring, but that's a layman's terms. But I would recommend EPD if they could to address that, both of those issues.
Thank you again. This is Chuck Mueller. And Chairman Smith is correct. Every permit has within it a requirement for them to submit a plan to us, which we have to approve, which details the design criteria to properly close the surface impoundment. So for most of these, where we will be closing with the coal ash still in place, that will require a cap. It will require proper drainage and the appropriate groundwater monitoring associated with it. Once they have completed all of those construction activities and we do a final inspection to ensure that all the criteria that is in their closure plan, they get a certificate that it has been properly closed. And then we enter into this post-closure period for the next, under this bill, 50 years, where we will be monitoring to ensure that the contamination stays within the boundaries of the facility. With regards to the second question, we will conduct inspections of the facility. So we will actually go out and put feet on the ground and look at the facility to ensure the cap is still maintaining its integrity and to make sure that it is still properly designed and draining appropriately. And that is what the last provision means is that our staff go out and we conduct inspections on almost all of our permitted facilities. So that is just a course of our business. In addition, the company is required to submit to us results of their groundwater monitoring, which we do in-house reviews to ensure that they are complying with groundwater monitoring standards.
Thank you, sir. And I will also mention, as a concerned member of this committee and the knowledge we gain here, that being a part of the appropriations process and the testimony that the department has given us over the last few years, we have diligently made sure that we actually fund the inspections at a higher level. And I know we've done that to at least a few more positions to make sure these things are completely safe.
I guess my question is, I'm not trying to change the language, but the cost, I was wondering, is it significant that we aren't doing it annually, but we're doing it every 5 years? I was kind of wanting an estimated cost of what to go to one coal ash pond. What is roughly the cost of doing a test?
So if I might answer this one, I know it is not on the state that the testing is on the power company. So it's not a burden that we bear for a test, but I know it's hundreds of millions of dollars that they put into these testings throughout our state. Yes, sir. And
Can I add?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Also, Mr. Mcdonough, at some point, if the power company's here and they do testify, you're welcome to ask that question maybe to them too, and they can let you know as an enterprise what that may cost.
Yes, sir. Okay, Representative Campbell, I believe.
Thank you, Chairman Barr. Just a quick question that I don't understand, fairly new on this. The monitoring program that will be set up for at least 50 years, and the whole thing from start to finish is done by EPD. Is that right?
Correct.
They set up the program. It's not the power company, or it's their program.
They have the
And
standards.
they actually do the work.
Yeah, I'd say they have the standards. They probably call guidelines, rules, and regulations that they set up, and then power companies abide by those in this type situation with coal ash.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mueller, can you confirm the process that is set up for the monitoring for us?
Yes, sir. So again, when we are reviewing the permits prior to approving them, the permittee has to provide us with their design of a groundwater monitoring program. We go through an extensive evaluation, and if we feel more need to be added or or they need to be in different locations, we compel them to do that before we approve the permit. Once the permit is approved, that groundwater monitoring network and the plan and the requirements for what they monitor and how frequent are all part of the permit. They conduct that analysis and we review it to ensure it's done in compliance with the permit conditions and it meets the standards.
And if I might, the question would arise then, if something does show up that's outside the parameters, y'all immediately go into action and change that. Can you speak to that briefly?
Yes, sir. So there's a couple of avenues here. For coal ash plants in particular, but for all of our facilities, if there are exceedances of the standards, the company is required to go through an assessment of what would be the appropriate corrective measures to put in place to rectify that situation and bring them back into compliance. We also have enforcement options available to us where we can put them on tight schedules and additional requirements if necessary to ensure that they meet the requirements that are in their permit.
Very good. Is there a member of the committee who has not asked a question that wishes to do so? Yes, ma'am. Can you tell me what number you are? Push your button, please, for me. Thank you. Go ahead. Thanks.
So you mentioned corrective action if contaminants leave the area, and there is a letter that was sent from Georgia Power, Mr. Mitchell, to the Cobb County manager in May of last year, which said that wells outside the perimeter of the Plant Mcdonough site indicated that coal ash had gone beyond those barriers, and this is an area. So I'm curious about corrective action, since that's something that happened almost a year ago. And also, if this bill doesn't mention liners, does that mean there is no corrective action required if it's determined that the coal ash that comes outside the barrier or outside the property of the coal plant needs to be cleaned up?
If that is something you can answer briefly, that would be great. Otherwise, maybe offline specifically to that question.
Well, I can do it real briefly. With regards to the particular scenario you indicated, as I recall, there were levels at the permitted facility boundaries that were of concern. And so the permittee had asked the county if they could install wells into the right of way to continue monitoring to see if they had left the property. My understanding is that those wells have been installed and the levels so far are below the levels of concern. So as of right now, there isn't a need for corrective action. They are monitoring it to ensure it doesn't get worse. To your second question, corrective measures, as they go through their assessments of what needs to be done, the option of ultimately requiring the facility to remove the coal ash or put down a liner is an option that is always on the table for consideration.
We are going to go on. We have quite a few testimony. Everyone in the room has been able to ask a question on the committee. So at this time, we are going to go to our Zoom member. April Lipscomb is here to testify on the bill. You may take a seat while we do this testimony. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'd just like to say thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee at the proper time. I'd certainly appreciate y'all's consideration.
Thank you, sir. Miss April, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. So if we could do 3 minutes in interest of time for everyone that would like to speak to the bill. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. I'll try to be brief. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is April Lipscomb. I'm an attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center. which for those of you who don't know me, we're an environmental advocacy organization with offices throughout the southeastern United States. We generally do support this bill. Coal ash is an incredibly important issue that is not going to go away anytime soon. So having laws in place and not just regulations is a good practice here. We view this bill as a good starting point. So post-closure care, inspections, groundwater monitoring, those are always good ideas. Our biggest concern with this bill, however, is that it supports Georgia Power's plans to leave coal ash sitting in unlined pits where coal ash is actually sitting in groundwater. We have had our own engineers and hydrogeologists look at Georgia Power's plans, and they agree that coal ash will be sitting in groundwater after these ponds are closed at many of these sites, which means that water is going to continue to infiltrate that coal ash from the bottom, pick up contaminants, and then exit that coal ash and enter groundwater, despite the presence of a cap on top. And Georgia Power has already detected contaminants from coal ash over the maximum levels at I think all of their plants. So this is a problem. And at two of their plants, at Plant Share and Yates, coal ash will also be sitting in groundwater in the regulated area that surrounds significant groundwater recharge areas. Those are areas where groundwater is particularly susceptible to pollution. So we would strongly urge the committee to consider why we are allowing coal ash to sit in unlined pits in areas where groundwater can become contaminated easily. In other nearby states, coal ash is being excavated in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, but not in Georgia. And that's a concern of ours. My final points, members of the committee, we are really concerned about what happens 30, 40, 50 years down the road when these coal ash ponds really start causing problems. I know the original bill did have a minimum post-closure care period of 30 years, and we appreciate that change to 50. We would recommend that monitoring continue indefinitely, however, as would the inspections by the division. But really, almost more important here, when these ponds start contaminating groundwater, which they will, Georgia Power is going to go back to the Public Service Commission, ask for permission to charge ratepayers even more money to come back and clean up their mess again. And so while we do support more laws on coal ash on the books, we want you to think about how these unlined leaking coal ash pits are going to affect ratepayers and how they're going to affect our water resources in the future. So please consider this as a starting point and look at additional ways that we can protect our citizens and the environment from this really toxic waste that we have in our state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm available for questions if any committee members have some.
Thank you. We are now Michael Pless, I believe. Are you joining us online, sir?
Yes, I am. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I would like, actually, April said that very well, but I'm not an attorney, I'm just a citizen and a small businessman. And I live in this community of Juliet near Plant Share. And my wife's family has grown up here. Just lost my brother-in-law this last Wednesday to cancer. Don't know that it's directly related, can't prove that, but it is a definite concern in this community. And while we appreciate the legislation that is being put in place, and I don't disagree with that at all, like Ms. Lipscomb said, I'm concerned that it's a starting place, but it's not nearly strong enough to actually protect us from what has already been done in the past, nor what the future ramifications will be. And again, putting a cap over, from what I understand, is certainly better than not doing anything, but it falls very far short of the safest option that is available to Georgia Power and to our community and our environment, which would be to remove the coal ash and cap it in a lined facility. There's no guarantee in the future that that won't also fail, but from what we know now, that is definitely a best practice and the safest thing, not only for our community, but for the environment now and in the future. So kudos to our lawmakers that are trying to extend this from 30 to 50 years. It's certainly a step in the right direction. I just want to make it clear that it still falls short. So without taking anything away, I want to encourage our lawmakers to continue to make sure that we're doing the best thing we can for the people of the state and for the environment looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Our condolences on your brother-in-law there. Next up, we have Aaron Mitchell. And I will remind folks if they wouldn't mind introducing themselves to the committee. Aaron, are you with us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And we can see you too, FYI.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Aaron Mitchell. I'm Director of Environmental Affairs for Georgia Power Company. Appreciate the opportunity, you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee, for the opportunity to speak. Brief comments that I wanted to address, kind of to break it in two sides, if you will, for the bill 647, including the substitute. And I'll start with the groundwater monitoring, reporting, and executive summary requirements. Just remind the committee that in 2015, when the federal CCR rule was issued, that Georgia Power announced that we would close ash ponds well before the regulations required us to make that determination. As well, we've been publishing information on our ponds and on the groundwater monitoring that occurs at our facilities. And we started that a full 18 months ahead of regulatory requirements. And we continue to do that today. As far as the requirements for the executive summary, including narrative that is easily accessible and digestible to the public, Georgia Power fully supports those amendments, and we will be certainly committed and happy to comply with that should the bill go forward. The second aspect of the rules related to the extended post-closure care period. As we understand the current rules, we believe that the 30-year post-closure care requirements are appropriate as they are and allow EPD adequate oversight. We certainly understand the committee's interest in ensuring that data continues to be collected and there is certainty that our closure plans are effective, and Georgia Power certainly is of the same mind. And if it is the will of the committee, Georgia Power will comply with those requirements of the extended time periods. As I mentioned, when I had the opportunity to brief the full Natural Resources and Environment Committee 2 weeks ago, as federal and state regulations related to CCR impoundments and closures change, Georgia Power will certainly adapt and change our plans to comply with those. Passage of House Bill 647 is no different, including all the requirements set forth and the extended period. Georgia Power will comply with the requirements if this bill moves forward. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, sir. If you don't mind, we have a question to pass along to you. We had a question on cost. I know it's a wide open question, but is there perhaps something you could give us on an annual basis or some handle on how much this does cost?
Yes, sir. Is that related to Representative McDonough's question earlier?
Correct. Yes, sir. The groundwater monitoring.
Sure, and I'll address it if I may, and please follow up with questions. As post-closure care as a whole, which includes groundwater monitoring, it also includes maintenance of the closed ash pond, the cover system, and other necessary maintenance and inspections that go along with that. Because the sites are so different, I'll give you a range if that's acceptable. The post-closure care requirements can range from hundreds of thousands of dollars to several $1 million per year on a closed ash pond facility. Those costs obviously include the groundwater monitoring as a component of that. But because of the size and the nature of each of the ponds are very specific, that range would encompass those variations.
Very good. The author of the question has a follow-up I will allow.
I understand that there's post-closure care and that's going to be a continuous process. My question, I want to be more specific, I guess, is in online. Heck, I put my glasses back on. The test that's being done annually as the closure is happening, and then of course the test that's done 5 years. I'm talking the specific test. That's the cost I was worrying. I'm getting to why would you do it annually, or you're doing it, in this bills every 5 years. I was just wanting the specific cost. I know you're going to be doing the post-closure care throughout the eternity of the pond, but the test itself, what the bill is specific to.
Okay, let me respond, and you please tell me if I misinterpret your question. Annually, we will do groundwater monitoring every 6 months. We'll produce those reports, file those with Georgia EPD, and post those to our website. I believe you may be asking, Representative, as to the inspections that Georgia EPD will conduct. Those would be something that Georgia Power Company would host the agency and certainly not conduct ourselves. But as we go through our closures, some of which can range a number of years, from 5 to 15 years. During that duration, my understanding is this bill would require EPD to inspect each site annually, but once closed, would require EPD to come out and visit to inspect each site at a minimum once every 5 years, once those facilities are closed. Does that help answer your question?
We had a freeze here for a moment on our computer. Representative Buckner, do you have a question for the presenter?
This is a cost question as well. I'm wondering what, and this is for Mr. Mitchell, I'm wondering what the difference is between the upfront cost of a liner in these ponds versus the end of pipe cost of adding additional test wells and other EPD required remediation if the contamination moves out past their buffer area that's designed. Does that make sense?
Would you be able to help us out with that, sir?
Yes, sir. And Representative Buckner, please follow up if I don't hit your question precisely. But the closure of each of these ponds ranges depending on the size of the pond and the nature of the closure itself, and the specific costs of any specific pond are trade secret, as we're in various stages of contracting with third parties to perform that work. But those costs can range from several $1 million to hundreds of millions to well over $1 billion, just depending on the nature of the pond itself. Within those costs, we include the post-closure care costs. We also include the work done to comply with the regulations that Mr. Mueller referenced earlier, to incorporate and address any corrective actions that are necessary to comply as we go along as well. So all those costs are factored into the total cost of the closures. Does that answer your question?
Maybe I'll have to get together offline. We actually, in the interest of time, need to move on to our next presenter. If we do have time, I will come follow up on your question after the presentations. I want to make sure, Mr. Gordon Rogers, are you online with us? Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I appreciate that. If you can stick around, we may have a question after the rest of the presenters.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, I am, Mr. Chairman. Can you read me?
Yes, sir. We hear you and we see you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to thank the sponsors and authors of the bill, Representative Smith, and also Chairman Smith and Chairman Dickey, who have constituents in the Flint. My name is Gordon Rogers. I'm the Flint River Keeper, and we work on the quality and the flow of the Flint from its headwaters in East Point, just above the airport, down to the Florida line. We have just under 1,000 families, farms, and businesses, between 3,000 and 4,000 people that are steady supporters of us financially and agenda-wise. And all of them take a deep interest in the Flint up and down the river. I'd also like to thank Representatives Buckner and Campbell, also of the Flint, for taking a deep interest in this bill and in this topic. We are in support of the bill and have a few comments to make. Along the Flint, there are 4 ash ponds, one at Plant Crisp, which belongs to the Crisp County Power Authority, and 3 at Plant Mitchell down in Mitchell County. All 4 of them are slated for closure by removal. All 4 of them are situated in a limestone karst landscape. And while removal is the preferred method by far, I would like for the committee to understand that there are geologies in Georgia, including limestone karst, that are extremely porous, meaning that you can conceive of this sort of geology as a Swiss cheese sort of affair. And while the water that seeps into the ground and moves through the ground generally moves toward the river or toward an adjacent creek, it sometimes does it by a circuitous route. And in the cases of all 4 of these ponds, there are people living nearby, and there are groundwater, drinking water supply wells nearby. So that's a very important piece of background for what I'm going to say next. While we believe that it's appropriate for the legislature to delegate as much authority as possible to the agency to manage the situation, because they have the knowledge and the flexibility and the expertise to do so, we also think that we know enough about coal ash in Georgia geologies and in the Southeast in general to be a little more specific these days. Particularly, we know that the response time for developing corrective action plans is not necessarily on the same scale of time as the needs of a surrounding neighborhood when coal ash contamination has seeped across a property line. And frequently, there are needs of surrounding property owners, and I'm not talking about financial compensation, et cetera. I'm talking about more immediate needs, such as clean drinking water, that can be met a little bit quicker than waiting on a corrective action plan, which may or may not include providing clean drinking water to the surrounding community. So I believe that the legislature in general, and this committee in particular, could take a closer look, if you would, at meeting some of those more immediate needs and having some language specifying a pathway to do so in this bill. Also, we know a lot about groundwater movement in Georgia. We know enough to begin to give EPD some direction about how many wells and well placement. There was
Rogers,
a day when
is it possible to wrap it up? You're well over our time limit, sir. I appreciate you, but please land the plane, sir.
Yes, sir. This is my last point. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. We do know enough at this point where the legislature could give EPD some fairly firm guidance on the number of wells and well placement, and I think you can do that in the bill. And I really appreciate what work has been done so far. We support the bill, and I thank you for your time and indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. At this time, I think we are going to go to Representative Washburn, who's here with us. So Representative, if you would to come up and please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Dale Washburn, representative from House District 141. The significance of that is Plant Shira is in the middle of my district and of course has a very large coal ash pond, and I've learned an awful lot about coal ash in the last few months. I rise today in support of substitute to House Bill 647. I think it's a good bill and a good substitute. And I believe that we are doing the best we can with the situation here to manage it and to monitor it. And so, Mr. Chairman, I just rise in support of that today.
Very good. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I know you've gone through a lot with your district here in the last year. Thank you. Let's see, we're going to, this is always embarrassing, Chris. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. You know who you are. Come on.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Can you all see me and hear me?
Yes. Very fancy background. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. Come on out on the river with us. Hello, everyone. Thank you for providing the time for the speakers today. I'm Dr. Chris Mcdonough, Chattahoochee Riverkeeper's Water Policy Director. Chattahoochee Riverkeeper works with our 9,000 members to make sure there's enough clean water in the river for all the people in the communities that depend on it and need it, not just today, but also in the future. The Chattahoochee River Basin is also the site of 3 Georgia Power plants at Mcdonough, Yates, and Wansley. There are 3 unlined ponds and landfills at these sites. They're gonna, Georgia Power has estimated that they're gonna move about 25 million cubic yards of coal ash. Just for a little fun visual, that's like 12 million F-150 pickup trucks worth of ash. CRK appreciates the intent of HB 647, which will take a lot of existing policy and rules that Georgia EPD already has, and that Georgia Power has, of course, pledged to comply with and to make those into law. We certainly are appreciative of extending the 30-year to 50-year kind of post-closure monitoring. We appreciate that. And certainly while this bill could be helpful, what would be more helpful is a law requiring that all toxic coal ash be disposed of in lined landfills. Toxic coal ash must be stored in lined landfills because Georgia Power has told us that those coal ash contaminants and regulated substances move around in the groundwater, specifically at Plant Mcdonough and Plant Yates. Georgia Power has documented the movement of these coal ash constituents and regulated substances outside their fence line at Plant Mcdonough onto public property in Cobb County. Georgia Power is concerned enough about this movement that they've tested the Chattahoochee River itself for regulated constituents and substances. They've also been concerned enough about it that they kind of went about the process of identifying an estimated 50 groundwater wells on private property within a 3-mile radius of Plant Mcdonough. And because the coal ash at Plant Yates will not be stored in a lined facility, this committee should also ask Georgia Power whether they will identify groundwater wells on private property adjacent to Plant Yates. Georgia Power is going to have $8 billion to clean up coal ash in Georgia. We would appreciate if they use the ratepayers' money to store that ash safely in lined landfills today, so that ratepayers don't have to come back and have it cleaned up and pay again tomorrow. So again, CRK appreciates the intent of HB 647. And while the bill is helpful, we would appreciate adding language that would require toxic coal ash, all of it, to be disposed of and stored in lined landfills. And I would also ask this committee consider giving HB 176 a hearing and a vote as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chris. All right, next we have Michael Patel. Are you with us, sir? Online.
I am here if you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the committee for allowing me time to speak. I am Michael Patel, a retired science teacher, and I paddle the Chattahoochee whenever I can. I live in Marietta and therefore have particular interest in and concerns about the operations at Plant Mcdonough. I want to thank Representative Smith and his co-sponsors for their efforts to clarify and expand groundwater testing around Georgia Power's coal ash disposal sites. Adequate testing is a necessary feature of coal ash disposal closure plans. However, I feel that even more needs to be done to protect Cobb Countyans and downstream users of the Chattahoochee River. As discussed by Representative Williams at the beginning of this meeting, Georgia Power knows there is offsite migration of toxic materials at Mcdonough. We all know that migration offsite will occur, so testing alone is not the solution. Action must be taken to prevent that migration. The only surefire solution is to fully line the coal ash disposal sites. The current plan at Mcdonough only calls for providing an impermeable top layer to prevent water from flowing down to the coal ash. However, since the ash sits at and below the level of groundwater on the site, and according to Georgia Power, groundwater there flows in a southwesterly direction towards the Chattahoochee River, we know that there will be ongoing contamination of the river by the buried ash. This contamination would not occur if the ash is fully contained within a liner. I'm especially concerned that the health-based thresholds that are in place for the monitored pollutants are based upon a determination of their threat as a single constituent. Coal ash releases a mix of pollutants whose collective effects are certainly way more harmful than the sum of all the single constituents. One constituent certainly exacerbates the effects of another, so that health-based thresholds considered singly are almost always meaningless. For example, a sample containing 4 micrograms per liter of cadmium and 0.8 milligrams per liter of lead would be deemed safe using current health standards. However, the interaction of the two may cause one or both of those elements to cause harm as if they were present at higher concentrations. Indeed, the harm may be far above what would be expected from the additive effects of the two together. There simply has not been enough testing of the effects of harmful substances when found in a mix such as that present in coal ash. Because of these likely interactive effects, we should be as prudent as possible in managing coal ash disposal sites. Therefore, I ask that your legislation include a provision that will protect our rivers. Plant Mcdonough sits on the banks of the Chattahoochee. Our streams, 2 streams are immediately adjacent to the ash disposal sites at Mcdonough. Our groundwater, the ash sits above and within the groundwater, and our infrastructure even. There is a large Cobb County water supply line buried within the ash. There's need for a provision to require a complete liner around buried coal ash. Please take these comments into consideration in your final legislation. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, sir. Gloria Hammond, are you with us online?
I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Introduce yourself and please go ahead.
All right. I am Gloria Hammond. I live at 2619 Luther Smith Road in Gillette, Georgia. I live right next to the plant, less than a quarter of a mile from the dam. I have several concerns after listening to everything. One thing, I'm still disappointed that we're not going to encapsulate the coal ash, but it is what it is unless it gets changed. I am concerned about, I'm hearing monitoring the cap and monitoring the wells. I am south of the dam on the same side of the coal ash pond. My concern is what would happen if we had another flood, a 94 or more severe. God hope that we don't, but what about that earthen dam? That is 16 million tons of coal ash behind it. Who is going to protect me from that coal ash if that dam gives us away?
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Does that complete your testimony?
Well, I've heard other things about cost of how much, $8 billion. Has anybody taken effect that my county is spending $20 million to run water lines to us that's got contaminated wells around Georgia Power? It's not just a Gillette area. It's east of Gillette and west of Gillette. And underneath there runs 2 aquifers. And if you cap in place you have got coal ash 85 feet down in the aquifer that would sit, and not to me, as long as it's there, it's going to continue to leach into our groundwater. So we'll never have wells probably around that area again. The cost, has anybody thought about the cost of how much it's going to cost us to hook up to water lines that's being run? I had a perfectly good drinking well, 60 feet deep, good well water. I'm so contaminated, I am scared to even bathe in the water. I reckon that sums it up for me. But I still live on my land. My son still lives on my land. My grandchildren still live on the land. And we plan, even though I may not be there 50 years, I have got remaining family that's going to be there. I'm just upset about everything, I reckon. And I'm sorry to get real personal. I've had several to die that's close to me that I can't say, but but my family is diminished in the last few years from cancer. I've lost 3 family members that lived on that land since Georgia Power's been there with cancer and all, and it's pretty widespread. Mike Pless, he summed it up better than I do because I got more emotion than ties right now to it. But anyway, that is my concern. They talk about money. You talk about what's happening to the people there that's got to hook up, the cost of the lines, from the county. What if that earthen dam hits me, gets weakened? That concerns me. I heard about checking wells. I heard about checking the cap. Does that include the dam? And that's all I got to say.
Thank you very much, and our condolences to the folks that you've lost. Please feel free to reach out to me, and we might be able to get you some of the answers that you had questions for offline. Thank you so much. And lastly, we have Adrena Goldsby. Adria, are you with us, ma'am? You may go ahead.
Did
Perhaps
you mean Andrea? Is that Andrea Goolsby?
That's correct. Miss Andrea, are you with us? All right, well, that will complete our testimony. I do believe we had one question from committee for Aaron, and as promised, we do have about 3 minutes to wrap that up. So, Mr. Mitchell, are you still with us? Do you have your question? Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Push your button for me.
Mr. Mitchell, so I have a question about the so-called trade secrets. Does Southern Company, which has dealt with coal ash in other parts of the country, have you used the term and kind of hidden behind trade secrets in those states, or just in Georgia?
Thanks for the question, Representative. No, we don't hide behind trade secrets at all. In fact, we report semi-annually to the Public Service Commission on our expenditures related to our ash pond program, and recently expanded the reporting of the expenditures related to this program towards the end of last year. Those requirements will continue. Obviously, we want to secure the best price from the vendors that will come and do the work for us on behalf of our customers. And until we lock in those contracts to ensure a fair bidding process, we will not publicize those numbers as any good business would until we've secured those. And then we will report as those funds are expended to the Public Service Commission and make those public.
Thank you, sir. Representative Smith, I believe you have a closing remark, and we, yes, sir, please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments, I guess. For 34 years, I was in the earth moving business, and probably during that time built some 300 ponds maybe years ago. And working with Mother Nature has always been an interesting experience, a great experience, and real rewarding. To build a small pond, you clean it out and you dig down. And in our area of the state where I live, in Harris County, District 133, we have what you call good old Georgia red clay down there. So you dig down and dig a core, a cutoff trench, as they call it, the soil conservation people, and you pack that good clay in that core, and sometimes that's 12, 15, 18 feet deep, and you pack that good clay in there, and you bring that clay up into the dam of the pond, and that clay prevents that water pressure in that pond from penetrating the material and going through the dam and having a pond that fluctuates. It remains full, and did that for years and years. I think about some of these areas. I'm not a geologist. I'm a former bulldozer operator and dump truck driver, but I think about some of these areas of the state where some of these ponds may be, and if that material is adequate where they are stored or impounded, and if there's a man-made pond there, I consider that a liner in itself. Now, there again, I'm not a geologist, and I'm not claiming to know where these are even located and what material is under there. But to compare that, and I kept thinking there a while ago, talking about liners. I used to buy the children a lot of floats down when we'd go to the beach, and those things last a pretty good while till they get that one little pinhole in them, and then that's it. And truck tires, I've patched a lot of dump truck tires with some patches. I don't know. Yes, liners are good if they never, ever, ever have a default and have some kind of crack, deterioration, anything in that liner itself. So you may have a liner that covers several acres, and with one small pinhead of a crack in there, you lose the composition of what you're supposed to be doing as in containing. And so just thought I'd make those few comments. Look, this bill, I think every piece of legislation we do here at the Capitol, this is my 20th year. I've seen us come back a number of times to legislation and perfect and improve. I hope we've perfected and improved this legislation, which strictly deals with monitoring. I hope we've improved it from even last year when we passed it out of the House. So therefore, again, I appreciate all the questions and comments, appreciate all the individuals that commented, EPD, and at the proper time when y'all do consider this, I certainly appreciate your consideration, Mr. Chairman.
Would you stand for a question? Do you have a question?
Absolutely.
Very good. Let me check in with, I believe we have one committee member online, and I don't want to make sure that they're not left out. Is there, Representative Bazemore, do you have any questions? Just didn't want to overlook you if you had anything that you'd like to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not at this time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions, committee? Representative Buckner.
As a person that drinks well water every day when I'm at home, groundwater monitoring and the lack of knowledge about the mapping of the flow of groundwater and the quality of groundwater in Georgia is of great concern to me. I have seen a lot of people in this Capitol wearing 2 masks. I know people that wear masks every day and have had a vaccination. I do hope that the committee will consider that even though this is a good bill and does great things, and I support it, and I do make the motion to do pass, I still think we need that extra protection for our groundwater of a clay base and a liner at some point in the near future before we lose more people to illnesses. Thank you. So I do move, do pass.
So you would make a motion to adopt substitute to House Bill 647?
Yes, substitute with 50 years.
Do I have a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
And then, very good, thank you. And I am told we need to make a second motion to pass the committee substitute to the full committee. Is there a motion? I say a motion. A second, further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Very good. And if the committee members will stick around shortly, we will have a full Natural Resources Committee meeting promptly at 3:30. Thank you, committee. Good work today. I'm very proud of this piece of legislation.
Thank you, Chair.